All right. I'm always curious for, entertainment purposes, since I don't bet anymore. Like over-unders, we always talk about over-unders. We're looking at, is Jacksonville tanking? How many games can they possibly win? What about Washington? Paulie thinks the Raiders are going to be one of the 3 worst teams in football, record-wise. George Chahrouri of Pro Football Focus. He's the director of content, co-host of the Pro Football Focus forecast, and he joins us now. Your job is crunching numbers here, George. So let me start with over-unders. Now, your over-unders are different than what Vegas has, but what are the metrics that you have in trying to come up with what is going to be the win total for teams?
Yeah, I mean, Vegas is pretty good at what they do, obviously. When we try and figure it out, we simulate the season 10,000 times, and we have our own power numbers that are built off of the PFF grading that largely goes into determining who wins these games. And then we look at and compare those to the Vegas total. We say, okay, what percent of the time is this team going to win more or less than the Vegas win total? And then we go spend all our money.
All right. How much is this year's prediction based off last year for a team?
A decent amount. I mean, how good a team is the year before is largely indicative of what they'll be this year, but we shouldn't forget that those teams tend to regress a little bit. So we probably have really rose-colored glasses when we look at the Chiefs, and we probably feel not so great about the Texans, and maybe we should temper those a little bit.
All right, let me start at the bottom. The team that will have the fewest wins this year will be?
This pains me because I actually like the Jaguars. I like Gardner Minshew, but that is the odds-on favorite. I'll give you a sleeper, though. I think the Panthers are very close. I do not think the Panthers are very good. We have them with just a few tenths of a win more on average than the aforementioned Jaguars. The tough thing for the Jaguars, they keep shipping out talent, but they have a quarterback in Gardner Minshew who people think is just languishing there. He earned the highest grade of any rookie quarterback last season. He's not bad. He's an accurate thrower of the football. And that often wins you a certain number of games. So I do think it'll be closer than people think.
All right. The over-under for those teams is what, 5?
Yeah. So I believe for the Jaguars, it's 4.5.
Okay.
Which is really low.
And are you saying take the over for the Jags?
It's tough because do you want to sit there and watch a team tanking? It's not one of my favorites. If I had to take over or under, I would definitely go over, though.
Okay. What is your favorite team for over-under?
This is tough because earlier in the offseason, I would have said the Lions. The Lions, I believe, were 6.5 to open, and we were on them right away because Matt Stafford was tremendous last year, second highest graded quarterback from a clean pocket before he got injured. That offense was awesome. And then everyone, saw them just be terrible down the stretch, but they're a good team. 6.5, it's now 7. I still like the over there. We have them clearing that total like 65% of the time. And then another one, I think you guys mentioned them earlier, the Washington football team. I got that right. I'm proud of myself there. 5.5, depending on where you look. This is kind of a fade on the Eagles as well. Not super high on them. I think they're going to struggle a little bit. The Giants, obviously not the greatest team in the world. And what they did last year with Jay Gruden and that debacle, I expect Dwayne Haskins to look more like he did after the bye when he was a top 10 graded quarterback.
How many wins? You're saying take the over for Washington?
I would take the over. Yeah.
What's the surprising win total, that you look at that maybe they're better than expected?
Better than expected. I mean, there are a couple here. I would say one that sticks out to me, a team that I think is probably overvalued by the market a little bit, surprisingly, is the Ravens. The Ravens win total is 11.5, and they were all just fantastic last year. Obviously, 14 wins, but they had great game scripts. They were the only team that ran fewer than 100 plays when trailing in the first half. They just never had to throw the ball, and so Lamar Jackson was always in control. If they win 11 games this year, that will be an impressive season. I think Lamar could improve, and they win 11 or fewer games this season.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. It felt like that was a little aggressive with the Ravens. I think the Steelers are going. If Ben is back, and if Ben is healthy, I don't know what you think of the Steelers. Do you like the Steelers or the Browns more as far as a win total?
I have them. We have them right there, neck and neck, very, very close. I would lean Browns. Our simulation leans Browns, and here's why: Ben Roethlisberger. We go back 2 years to think about when he was at the top of his game, but he struggled 2 years ago and at the start of last year, and then got hurt. And they don't have Antonio Brown anymore. Juju Smith-Schuster did not look like the guy that he did alongside Antonio Brown last season. So I'm going to temper those expectations on the Steelers just a bit. Plus, I think they had 41 turnovers. That number is going to regress. I mean, they're a great defense, but you're just not going to get that kind of turnover luck.
I was wondering about the Rams. Like it feels like they're middle of the road. You know, it feels like everybody jumped off the Super Bowl bandwagon, and I don't know where we are with. I think Seattle might be the class in that division as opposed to San Francisco. But your thoughts on the NFC West?
The NFC West is an interesting one to me because the Niners, they're at 10.5. I could definitely see. I feel like they are a team that the under is a smart play there. The simulation would back that up as well. So I'm under on the Niners a little bit. The Rams, that number has come down. I believe it opened at 8.5. And that number has come down. We bet it earlier in the year, and that number has just shot down. They did not invest in their offensive line. That was the one thing they had to get better at. They didn't invest in it. So I'm pretty worried about the Rams. It would not surprise me if they're the worst team in the NFC West after this season. It really would.
What about the Packers?
Sorry, say that again.
What about the Packers?
So the Packers are tricky because they're a team that we look at their draft and we go, okay, they drafted poorly, or at least many people think they drafted poorly. But the draft doesn't impact that following season as much as we want to believe. They still have the best quarterback in that division. They still have Devontae Adams, the best receiver in that division. And they have probably the best defense in that division as well.
And running back.
And running back for what that matters, maybe both of them. And so I look at the Vikings and I go, is that really the team that's going to dethrone the Packers? They're bringing in like 20 draft picks, so talk about continuity there. I know that, in some places the Vikings are the favorite. And I would lean Packers there.
Do you rank quarterbacks?
Of course.
Number one quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. Number two is
Russell Wilson.
Okay. Number three.
This is where it gets tricky for me. Number three for this season.
Now, is this opinion or numbers here, George?
Well, look, we can do both. We rank them based on PFF grade from last season, and then we regress it a little bit to what we expect them to be this season. So our number three quarterback, just purely based on numbers heading into the season, is Drew Brees. But if you're looking at, me to project it forward a little bit, I hesitate there. I'm just not sold that he can sustain it long term.
What about Dak Prescott?
Dak is tough because he was a guy that graded 10th last year, and the numbers looked really good for the Cowboys. They were the best team in terms of yards per pass play, but it didn't materialize when it really mattered. If I had to, I would take him in that 7 to 10 range, but he's not top 5 for me.
What about MVP? Do you rank MVP candidates?
I looked at this right before I came on because I was hoping you'd ask me. So Mahomes, I believe, is 5-1 right now, and he should be the favorite, but those odds are just way too steep. A couple of values that I think are there. Russell Wilson, who I believe is 14-1. We would make him more like 11-1. He should have been, by our wins above replacement metric, the MVP last season. Now, Lamar Jackson was incredible statistically, but what Russell Wilson does as a passer generates more value. I think he's got a great shot. And then a long shot for you. This will surprise some people. He's 33-1, Matt Ryan. Think about this. If that Falcons team puts it together on offense and they somehow win that division, and there's some questions there, continuity for Tampa Bay, Drew Brees, can he sustain? That would give him a real shot to be the most efficient passer in the league, which often is what determines who wins MVP.
And I know you brought up Russell Wilson, and I've been a big proponent of him. What he does for his team is more than any other quarterback, in my opinion. But you also have to factor in storyline. Lamar Jackson was a great storyline. So to win the MVP, the writers love to have a great story, a new story, a fresh story, and Lamar Jackson was certainly that. And I think that factored in. He had a great season. I don't know if he wasn't more valuable to his team, in my opinion, than Russell was to Seattle.
You're spot on, right? You're trying to predict what people are going to feel.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson, though, to me, he's a freak. So how do you predict freak events, right? That's hard to do. So take the guy who, and Russell Wilson, honestly, has been overlooked for a while. I agree with you wholeheartedly. He does so much for that team. And there's going to be a little bit more of a focus on them this year, I think, given how close they were last year. They've got Jamal Adams in there, adds a little bit more of star power to that team. And we all talk about this with regard to Pete Carroll, wanting him to let Russ cook a little bit, let him throw the ball on early downs a little bit more because he's so efficient. Maybe he leans into it. I have faith Pete Carroll listens, that he wants to embrace change. So maybe he gives him a few more passing attempts.
Who's your Super Bowl pick?
This is tough for me because I am from the Bay Area. So I suffered through that Niners Super Bowl. I want to see them go back, but I believe it will be Chiefs Seahawks in the Super Bowl.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever get in fights? Like stat
fights? All the time.
Yeah.
That's what we have a company Slack chat, and it's really just arguing about stats all day long.
Any punches ever thrown?
Well, thanks to the pandemic, no, because no one can reach anybody.
In previous years, George, was there any that get tempers flare?
The funny thing is that people get way more angry and fool themselves online. And then when you're in the same room, things calm down a little bit. That's why I always like having people talk it out, on a podcast as opposed to Twitter, because it tends to mellow people out a little bit.
Great stuff, George. Enjoy the season. We appreciate your time.
Anytime, Dan. Thank you.
That's George Chahrouri, Pro Football Focus Director of Content, co-host of Pro Football Focused Forecast, joining us.